that I love you so.
And welcome to Let 'em Talk. I'm Paul DiRienzo.
And I'm Miss Joan Marie Musi.
And our guest is Dana Beal.
Welcome, Dana.
Welcome.
Well, you're welcome.
Dana, Dana, welcome back to Let Them Talk. You are one of our select few guests who have been on the previous radio version of Let Them Talk.
Yep.
And many repeat performances.
And actually, in the background, you can see the back of the book that Paul and I did on Ibogaine. But we're not here to talk tonight about Ibogaine or medical marijuana or the pot parade, which you might hear us talk about other times, but to address global warming.
Right, we're here. It's an important issue, and Dana has been working on this issue for a long time, and he's been working on basically a solution you proposed to the world body, now at the United Nations. It's here in town.
Right, well, actually...
And most of the countries, all the leaders of all the countries in the world in the UN, except, I guess, for Thailand.
Yeah.
Since there's been a coup there.
And it's a
little problem.
Yeah. Right, and it's a fascinating theory, and so we're here to all those folks from the different missions of the 160 or 70 odd countries in the United Nations who are in hotels in New York, who are zipping through cable TV, and have come across this.
Here we are, you know.
We have your ear.
Yeah, and
world body.
And it's especially interesting because, of course, right now they're ratcheting up tension around the issue of Iran and Iran's various misbehaviors, their potential nuclear threat, which I don't really. I think it's like the weapons of mass destruction. You know? These guys can make a slight amount of uranium. They're just getting started, and it won't be a bomb for 10 years. But
and
of course,
what would they do with it anyway?
Of course, you know, Bush and Cheney and these people are hysterical.
Yeah.
So we have a plan to work. Yes, to work with.
Make sure people understand.
We hope you'll call us.
Yeah.
That's our number right there. We'll take your calls as the show goes on.
Right, but we have a plan where we think we can work some of the permanent members of the UN, Russia and China, to deal with global warming, a plan, if you will, for global cooling, right?
I see.
Which
to reverse it.
To reverse global warming without necessarily addressing quite yet the problem of automobile emissions, which, you know, Gore just came out and said we have to address automobile emissions. I think as long as we have Bush and the Republicans in there and the oil industry running the country, it's a little premature to attack automobile emissions. So we're looking at alternatives, and of course, one of the great alternatives is hemp, right?
Hemp.
Reforestation, which is, you know, a big problem around the world. They're cutting the forests down, and the forests are the lungs of the planet. So what we're looking at is replacing wood with hemp. Yeah.
Is this like seeding clouds?
No. What we've been looking at is various places on the planet where we could sequester fresh water, which would otherwise go into the ocean, right?
Okay.
Now,
And
what does that mean, sequester?
well,
Make
to
a big
impound.
lake or-
Connect.
Yeah, kind of impoundment, kind of like a dam, right?
So like a lake.
A lake.
Yeah.
And, you know, North America, by the way, would be a vast desert if it weren't for the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes are enormously important.
Like a reservoir.
Yeah, the Great Lakes are enormously important for our climate. And, you know, right now we're having a huge drought in places like Dakota.
Well, you have
because they don't get enough of that.
illustrations here. What,
Right.
What are the
Well,
illustrations?
this is the first thing. This is what's going to happen
Okay,
to the
show.
Arctic.
All right. We'll get a close up here.
Yeah. This is what's going to happen.
upside down.
Yeah, you're upside down.
There it is. Now.
Yeah, you see right
Let's
there.
take a light. There we go.
In you see the Arctic Ocean, and below the Arctic Ocean is the part of northern Asia and Siberia, which is going to be underwater.
Where my finger here is.
Yeah, this part here is a big swatch of land, and it's all going to be underwater. There's other places that are going to be underwater. For instance, Bangladesh. Now, not many people live.
England is there.
Yeah, not many people live up north, but in Bangladesh, they're estimating that 200 million people will have to be resettled somewhere in the world, or, you know, basically, I guess the United States could stand there with machine guns and try to keep them from coming in. But a couple of people in an op-ed in the New York Times recommended that these people be allocated to different advanced countries for resettlement, depending upon the degree to which the advanced countries are generating greenhouse gases.
So this is the
Now,
area
Dana,
that's
what is-
important.
And, you know, the United States is generating a lot of greenhouse gases, so the United States will get 75 million new Bangladeshi citizens. Now, what is Rush Limbaugh going to say about this? What are the right-wing talk radio nuts who are like going on about a few Mexicans going to say about 75 million Bangladeshis? So we need an alternative to the oceans coming up, right? And one of the things is to keep the water from running down into the oceans from various Siberian rivers, and to redirect those rivers south from the Trans-Ural. That's the area immediately across the Ural Mountains, which is very, very low and it might be flooded
You have
under.
another map with that?
Yeah,
that
yeah,
shows that?
Okay, let me get my question in, because I want to ask, what is the timetable on this?
Well, we're going to have to obviously get Russia and China behind this. Russia, because
Now, this is a lake
this is
that
part of
doesn't
Russia.
exist. This is an alternative
Yeah.
universe.
Yeah, this is the thing in the bottom. There are two lakes there that you can see. The part in the north, the top of the map is the Arctic Ocean.
Right. Now,
And
here, this body of water does not today exist.
what it is it was a lake in prehistoric times, maybe 3 million years ago. Now it's a vast marsh. But as you see along the top of the lake, there's an old ridge line, and if you plug in, just fill dirt where the it's a little bit lower there in your upper, right to the
Here?
yeah,
Mountainside?
up a little bit,
Yeah.
right there. There's right there. See it?
Yeah.
See, there's a channel. There's a channel.
There's a channel there. Okay.
And you plug that up with stuff you see down below. There's
A new
currently a canyon where one time the Caspian Sea spilled out into the Arctic Ocean, and this would be excavated and reversed, and the water would run into the Sea of Aral, or Lake Aral, which is currently desiccated because Uzbekistan is taking all the water to grow cotton, and so this whole lake is turned into salt flats. And it would run down here. You can see the third thing.
Oh, really?
This is the thing that this is a,
Like this?
yeah. You see, it would run down into the, it would run down into Aral, and then into the Caspian. There's the enlarged Caspian.
There you
And over in the far corner there,
go.
by your hand,
Here?
yeah, up a little bit,
Uh-huh.
that's the Black Sea. That's the corner of the Black Sea there.
I see. Oh, here.
Yeah. So basically, by digging another spillway,
This is all like...
this
water
would all
that-
be fresh water,
This is all
beautiful.
an area that does not exist right now.
Yeah.
This would
Well,
all
no,
be-
the Caspian Sea exists,
The lower
but
area here.
it's about 200 feet under sea level, and it's full of brackish water in the Iranian end. And one of the great things about this is China would back this because it would vastly increase rainfall in western China, which is currently a desert. It would increase rainfall in Kazakhstan, snow in Tibet. The glaciers in Tibet are currently melting off, and Tibet is turning into a desert as well. It would cause it to rain as far as Peking, right? Because it's like the Great Lakes, you have lake effect.
Right.
And so we think that Russia would basically be selling the water. China would be getting the rainfall, right? So you have two permanent members of the UN that are going to back this. And basically, the Bush administration really can't do anything to stop this idea.
Right.
So,
Who's going to do the work?
well, that's the thing. We believe the United Nations has to step in and deal with the global warming problem and has to get control over world climate. We need a world body to control world climate. So basically, in the tropical areas like Brazil or Malawi, we have a lot of people who are basically poaching on the forests. They're poachers. They're timber thieves, right?
Poor people who are going into the forest.
And they have nothing they can do, and we would give them a chance to resettle in these conservation camps.
So you're moving
In-
a lot of people around.
Yeah, right. But basically, they would take them off of cutting down the
They're
forests.
going to want to move is my question.
Well, we offer them better education for the kids, more money than they're getting now, good contract.
What about the
And basically,
enemies?
if they kept like cutting down the rainforests, we wouldn't give them a choice because we don't have an option of cutting down the rainforests.
Dan, this is
And the other
the first
thing
time
is,
I'm hearing
we could have them growing hemp, right? in the vast rain shadow that would go all the way to the Gobi Desert,
I see.
we could have millions of acres of hemp and replace the cellulose that's currently being taken from trees with hemp.
I see.
And obviously, you know,
This is a new part of the plan.
this
This
is
is about the
Yeah.
phone number because a
There
lot
it
of
is.
people
Well, it's
might
right down
wanna
there.
call
It's
and ask a question.
212-757-1538.
So call us up.
But there are other people, corporate polluters, could be drafted to go and serve, digging the trenches.
Who's gonna administer
This is what I was
this?
getting at.
Well, who's going to administer it? I think we're going to have to take some people that have been wasted. You know, I think of the cops arresting people for riding bicycles, for instance, or narcs who arrest people for marijuana should be reassigned to running. You know, they could give them administrative administrative duties, looking after these vast populations which we bring in from Brazil. You know, they can't really arrest people in Brazil. You see what happens when they arrest people in Brazil? They have riots.
So why don't we just
They-
arrest
they-
the cops and send them to do the digging?
Well, no. We don't want to humiliate the police. We want to give them some responsibility. They'll be you know, wearing a uniform. They'll still be able to lord it over
But now
people.
we're getting a
But
phone
basically,
call.
yeah, okay.
So
Hello.
hang on,
No,
we
we'll
have
get
to
it. We'll
answer
find
it
out later.
first.
Here we go. You're on.
Hello.
Hey,
Hi.
Go
How are
ahead.
you?
hello?
Yes, you're on.
Yeah, about like global warming and all the bodies of water.
Yeah.
Did you know that there's a lake in between Bolivia and Peru called Lake Titicaca?
Yeah, well, the problem with that is it's very high and doesn't really affect anything. We're talking about reflating Lake Chad, sending water into the Great Salt Lake, possibly flooding out Salt Lake City, but, you know, we can afford to lose a few Mormons.
Is Lake Titicaca, is it true that's filled with semen?
Huh?
Okay, Paul.
Is it filled with
See,
semen?
this is one of the guys from the Howard Stern show.
Oh, no, not again.
Hello?
Are you one of the guys from the Howard Stern show?
No.
Oh, yeah.
You just like to do this on your own.
Oh, he's a
Diarrhea?
Yeah, go ahead. You have a question.
Is Lake Titicaca filled with semen?
Come on, give us a break, guys.
Same thing.
This is serious stuff we're discussing here.
Yeah, now the point is, yeah, there are places in the United States. For instance, you know, we could like excavate the delta of the Colorado River and bring water further north, and this would create. You know, right now they're having tremendous
The
rainstorms.
Rio Grande
Yeah.
River doesn't even make it all the way to
Yeah,
the
and that's
Gulf
right.
of
But
Mexico.
they had 13 inches of rain in El Paso, and we could like cause it to rain more
There's a question. Too.
Yeah, but
in places like El Paso.
isn't it risky to play with the weather?
Oh, we're playing with the weather already, Joanie.
We are
Yeah, I mean, what do you think Bush is doing every day?
playing with the weather.
Yeah, injecting all the automobile exhaust into the atmosphere. That's playing with the weather. You got to do something to, you know, kind of compensate for that.
Well, these are really extreme plans, right? To move rivers.
Nah,
It's not.
no. I think that it'll be good. You know, in the past, but you have to understand that 3 million years ago, the Caspian Sea was huge, and at that time, you didn't have like a desert all the way across Central Asia.
But is
because
that
it rained.
natural evolution or that's man?
Some of it is a result of mankind. Some of it is just the result of the fact that, you know, rivers have a tendency to make channels. They have a tendency to make canyons. And pretty soon you don't have a lake. You just have a river, right? So if you put the dam back there, you put the ridge back the way it was, you have a lake again.
So these new lakes that you're proposing, would they be just for water for people to consume?
Well,
or
I'm
would they
telling
be
you,
like
it-
a recreational
you know,
area like Lake Mead, say?
Yeah, it would be also recreational, but you really have to
Water
understand is,
skiing,
you have to understand there's two things. One,
swimming.
we're going to run out of water, and
I hope
people
not.
are going to like die of thirst
Oh, I hope not.
in this century.
No.
In a lot of places, if we don't do something to save the fresh water. Okay.
So you think
Number
this
two,
timetable is
no,
urgent?
it's urgent. Number
Oh,
two, you know, we cannot afford to lose the, you know, vast stretches of land that could be arable. We could be
You know,
growing
you could
hemp.
Put a crop in.
We can put a crop in. Of course, the best crop is hemp, but we can put a crop in there and,
let's talk
you know,
again.
make the cellulose we need to replace the forests in, you know, the rainforests and bring back the rainforests.
But let's talk again about the concept of relocating people. Like, I think that's a very difficult concept.
Well, look, you don't understand. The people are going to have to be relocated if we do nothing, Joanie. If Bangladesh floods because we don't do something to keep the level of the world ocean from rising, what are you going to do with those people when they show up, the boat people show up here? And it's a bunch of poor Bangladeshis who have, like, no skills except maybe, like, taking a water buffalo and, like, making rice patties. Well, some of them can do computers, but I think they're going to get, the problem is there's some skilled ones, but the kind of people that are going to get displaced are dirt poor. And they don't have skills, and they don't even speak English. So it's either we leave those people where they are because we don't let the oceans rise, because we keep the water somewhere else as fresh, potable water that we can sell Iran.
All right, let's hear from some people who have questions for Dana, because
Sure.
this is really radical thinking, let's say.
Yeah, I was in the Greens. I mean, I
It
was
was devastatingly radical thinking here, because a lot of people, it's controversial to say that people should move from their home countries to a strange place in order
Not just
to...
the people, but a large group
Right.
of people.
and not just
At
that,
one time.
and not just that.
Finish my point, to terraform a huge part of the earth.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's terraforming,
Reform,
like Robert
To
Heinlein.
take a huge part of the earth, like a million square miles or a million square kilometers, and to totally change it in radically different ways that in the past was caused by ice ages.
Yeah.
All right, so our phone number is 212-757-1538. If you
What
have
do
a
you think?
question for Dana or you have an opinion about his idea.
Should desperate measures do desperate times? This is
Necessitate desperate measures, you mean?
Well,
Well, that's pretty big measure.
it's pretty big measures. Well, Dana, it's really what you're promoting is very much in the spirit of Thomas Paine.
Well, I would
He was
say,
the man who said,
actually,
desperate measures, desperate times.
terraforming is a word from Robert Heinlein, the classic science fiction writer. It's more in the spirit of Robert Heinlein. What can we do? Basically, Bush is in charge here.
Right.
We're going to have to go to some other parts of the world to demonstrate that this can work, and then we can bring it here, right? But right now, the United States is not exactly the most progressive country in the world in terms of its government.
Have you approached anyone in
Well, I'm working with Boaz.
governmental
Boaz
field
is, of
or
course,
NGOs or-
Boaz Wachtel is, one of the Ibogaine activists in Israel, but he's also into this water reclamation thing.
He's been working on this for years.
And he's been working on this for years, just as it affects, Israel and Palestine and everything. They have a
Right.
tremendous problem of, like, inadequate water. And
Especially for
they have to make
their-
peace so that they can bring the water down from Turkey. As long as they keep shooting at each other, they're going to end up, like, dying of thirst.
Right. And that's Boaz's plan, was to build a canal from the water source in Turkey to provide water to basically refloat the Jordan River, because the Jordan River...
And to fill up the Dead Sea with
paraphrase
water.
the song, even the Jordan River has dead bodies floating.
Yeah, so the point is, we can wait until we're gasping for air and dying of thirst, or we can, say we're going to have to cede some power to the United Nations and take control of the climate out of the hands of the United States and put it in the hands of the United
Let's
Nations.
discuss this whole United Nations thing. Just why I have one question, because
I do
you're
too.
putting all this, and we'll let Joanie, you're putting all this onus on look at Darfur. The United Nations is here, and the only thing they do in New York, it seems, is run up traffic tickets that they don't pay.
Well, okay, no, but
What's your question, Joanie?
yeah.
I didn't know yours was the traffic ticket question.
Right, well, but
So my
yeah.
question was, because I don't know, and this is a concrete question, is there a committee or a division
Yes,
in the United Nations
yes, they
that deals with
recently
global
printed.
weather trends?
They actually printed an interim report on water reclamation,
and have you approached
and
that
they
committee?
need to be approached. But you see, the brilliant thing about this idea is there are two permanent members of the UN who have a big interest in doing this: Russia and China. They can do what
give
they
up-
want
to give over-
under the UN, just the way Bush invaded Iraq.
To give over a huge amount of their territory to a giant inland sea that doesn't exist anymore yet. Or
Yeah.
doesn't exist
Well,
yet.
you have to understand that a lot of the Caspian area is desert. So if you put water in the desert, you know, it was a desert before, now there's water. A lot of the area north of there is a vast marsh. I mean, nothing can really, you know, there aren't a lot of people living in the marsh.
You still haven't answered my question, because you're putting a lot of you know, I'm not joking around. The United Nations is not known for getting anything done, really. I mean, that's the main criticism people.
Well, we're going to have some kind of.
They have all these commissions and studies.
It's a huge project.
Well, yeah,
it's really a jawboning society.
I understand, but you're going to have to put somebody in charge, and I don't think we should put George Bush and the oil companies in charge of the climate.
Well, that's who's in charge right now.
I think it's a bad idea, and we have it now, and it isn't working.
212-757-1538.
Yeah, call us up. We want to know what you think, too.
What do you think of this? This is a mind-boggling question. I mean, the idea, this radical idea of basically digging a huge inland sea.
It won't take that much digging. You're just actually putting stuff back.
There you go.
It won't take a lot of digging. This could be done with. This could have been done by Joe Stalin with 1930s technology.
Wait. How large of a lake would this create, a reservoir?
Oh, about as big as the Black Sea.
Oh, so huge.
But then also the Caspian Sea would increase in surface area maybe 4 or 5 times, which would vastly increase the amount of like water evaporation and the rain in places like Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Western China. In Western China, they're planting trees, but they can't stop the sand dunes blowing in because they're just not getting enough precipitation.
To what? Hold the sand down?
Yeah, to make stuff grow.
Oh, okay. To hold the dirt.
Right. But there are other areas, you know, for people who can't stand, you know, Siberian climates. There's work to be done in the Sahara Desert.
Oh, we have another call coming in. Should we try it out?
Let's give it a shot.
Yeah, let's give it a shot.
Well,
You're on. Let them talk. Go ahead.
hello?
Hello?
Anybody there?
I think maybe if they're, well, leave them on.
They're tongue-tied.
They're tongue-tied. It's just such a mind-boggling thing, you know.
Oh, don't worry.
You're another call.
Okay.
You're on.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Go ahead.
I'm good. I never usually watch television, but all of a sudden I've come across this station, and it's really quite mind-boggling.
Oh, great.
I guess I'm just really intrigued by the passion of the man in the center of you two. He seems to have more energy than can even be shown on television. But I also have a concern for the environment and living in low. I feel like it's really.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, living in Lower Manhattan as a young 20-year-old female, I've suddenly felt like a realization that it's really not something we can sleep on, like the environment and all of the chaos and war that is all over the world right now that we're all like kind of sleeping on, especially as these like overprivileged Manhattanites that a lot of
Overprivileged people who are not privileged or not.
Where do you live in southern Manhattan?
I live on Canal Street, actually.
Okay, well, what you really ought to do is talk to a woman named, what's her name, Julie Nadel Spiegelberger, who's concerned about keeping the park that they have along the Hudson River, right? She's one of these preservationists, and you maybe should contact her and get her involved in this because. Obviously, they're not going to have a park if the oceans come up at all.
And how soon do you think the oceans are going to come up?
Well, it kind of depends on what happens with Greenland. It depends on what happens with Antarctica.
So you're saying everything is really relative right now in terms of the environment's destruction, and it's actually something that frightens you, obviously, right now in this moment, and it should frighten me, too.
Here is... and these dark areas are areas of Russia and areas here of North America that would possibly be underwater.
Yeah, and that's just around the Arctic Ocean.
And around the Arctic Ocean alone in this century.
Wow.
So I don't think it's going to be too good for Manhattan, and I think everybody living in a city like Hong Kong or Singapore or Manhattan or one of the oceanfront cities ought to be lobbying their government to take 1/8 of 1 cent of the sales tax and put it towards the water reclamation plant.
Where did you get that map of Manhattan that shows the high and low
The city
areas?
got it. The city sent it to everybody. Every household in Manhattan got one, and it shows the areas around the edges of Manhattan that would be flooded.
Right, that are
in a in this case not from global warming, but from a large storm,
Right.
and which of course reflects the global warming.
Yeah, we were lucky. We were really lucky this year as far as the hurricane season. You know, for some reason the hurricanes missed the Gulf of Mexico or something. But, you know, we can't count on that. You know, basically with global warming, you get more violent storms, you get the oceans rising, and you get the deserts spreading, and you get water.
Are you still with us, caller?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead.
You get basically the water supply being cut off for people who live in places like Phoenix, right? They're going to be in, tough times.
They're talking about large storms now at this stage of the game. Storms like the one that, like Katrina, that could affect New York, for example, which is, due for a large hurricane. We dodged a bullet the last few years, but New York has been due for a large hurricane, and there was one in the 1930s that killed 500 people on Long Island. And there's still people talk about it like it happened yesterday. It was so devastating.
It basically flooded Providence.
Right. No, New York is very susceptible to potential flooding and a huge storm. And the city is only now, because of 9/11, beginning to even answer this problem, even though they knew. There's everything in New York has to be built according to 100 and 500-year flood lines. They have maps that show potential flooding that's due by every 500 years and every 100 years. And every 500 years, it's amazing how much of Manhattan could be covered with water, lower Manhattan.
The funny thing is, I'm in a kind of a dialogue with High Times over this, environmental hemp thing.
By the way, we only got over a minute and a quarter left.
And, the publisher of High Times has a beachfront, $220 million beachfront home they're losing to the ocean.
Right.
We think they should talk to us.
Oh, right. Well, also building on the beach is one of the things along with global warming that's caused the problem.
Yeah, it's not wise.
Dana Beal, how should people get in touch with you?
And thank you, caller.
Thank you very much, caller.
Yeah, you can call us at 212-677-7180.
Repeat that slowly. We all
212-677-7180.
Wait, 677
7180.
7180.
And we'll talk to you about green politics, global warming, industrial hemp, ibogaine for interruption of addiction, or the annual marijuana parade.
Wow.
If you give us a call.
All right.
Will do. Thank you.
Thanks, Dana.
Very
Thank you
passionate
very
people.
much, caller. You're on.